I'm Marianne Clyde.
And I'm Lorna McGill.
And we're here with the Isn't She Amazing podcast. And once again, we have another amazing guest. Lorna, tell us about Lori.
I am so excited that Lori has agreed to join us. This is Lori McCarthy, and she's the executive director and partner at Herren Wellness. And it is an integrated recovery and wellness facility is it in Boston?
In
Right
Seekonk,
outside?
Mass.
That's
So it's in
Seekonk, Mass.
Massachusetts, on the border of Providence, Rhode Island, though. Yeah.
So she's a licensed alcohol and drug counselor and works with those facing the disease of addiction. And she's a recognized leader and has been on many variety of media outlets, Associated Press, the Boston Globe, and several radio stations. And today we're going to discuss women and drinking and alcohol.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's amazing to be here. And Lorna, I love what you're doing and what you've created. And I'm just thrilled to be part of it. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I'm just going to start. So Marianne and I have been having lots of discussions about this recently, just personally. It's like, how much are we drinking? Do we drink too much? Why do we drink? And we just see that so much of our social life revolves around that. Mm-hmm. And really, like, what is that doing for us? Or, our mental
to us.
I think, there's a lot of mental components that come into play. Are you seeing that there's like an uptick in just what you do with women?
Yeah, so much. I've actually been watching, this trend just on a personal basis as well, not only being in the field, but being a woman in recovery. I'm going on my 36th year. And
Wow.
So I've raised a family and I have children and, growing up in my neighborhood and in social situations and, all the things that we do with our children and in our schools and all the socialization around it. I've been a very astute observer of the trends, really over like the last 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
And how it has, where we are in our culture right now with alcohol as women, as mothers, as independent women, as working women. So it really crosses, every demographic, every socioeconomic, area that there is. And importantly enough, what message are we giving to our children as women around the use of alcohol? And I know that intentional overuse of alcohol is not really, it's not really a thing. It kind of is in college, or people are drinking to get a buzz and all of that. But I feel like later on in life, it's used more as a way to socialize. You meet a new friend group, you meet a new work group, a new mom group, and it's the common sort of cultural lubricant, right? Like have a glass of wine, share a recipe, get to know each other's children. And it's very innocent and appropriate. There is a responsible use of alcohol. And what happens though is not everybody's physiological makeup is different. Everybody's stress tolerance level is different on an individual basis. So what it may do for some will do to others. And I think that education and wellness around this topic, we could just use more and more and more and more instead of, we've all grown up, I know I have, where we didn't really talk about that stuff. Like my parents were super social, they had cocktail parties, and, if somebody had a drinking problem, it was never discussed. It was hidden, in the sidelines. But because of the prevalence now of substance use disorder and where we are with alcohol use disorder and dependence on alcohol, whether it's physical or emotional, the conversation needs to be present, and we need to support each other as women. As to, you're asking amazing questions. I wish everybody asked those questions. What are we doing with this? Is it helpful? What does it do to us? And kind of noticing the attraction and what's it like to not have it before it gets to be like an issue or a problem for someone. So it's I think during the pandemic, the use for women with alcohol, like alcohol sales in general, jumped 3%. And then the trend for women has only climbed. And Chris Herren, who is the founder of Herren Wellness, he travels and does a lot of public speaking and speaks to, schools and foundations and all kinds of things. And people will ask him, during the pandemic, what did you see in your center? What did it look like with people coming to your center? And he will say, at first we got young adults, like kids, college, isolated. They're now at home, really struggling. Anxiety, depression, marijuana, alcohol. He says the next wave that came were like men that were not used to being in the house, that were used to working outside the house, that were completely isolated in their homes, and drinking kind of picked up. He said the moms held out the longest. The last wave of admissions for us are amazing women. Their moms
Really?
working or and all of a sudden they just find themselves like, it started out as a few glasses of wine, and now they are physically addicted and or emotionally addicted, and it's causing all kinds of health consequences and relationship consequences, and kids are upset, and families are, the ship is tilting. And so, and it makes sense, right? Like the moms held it all together for as long as they could.
So they fell apart.
Tell me how Herren Wellness Center actually works.
Okay, so we are available. Our criteria for admission doesn't have to be that you are diagnosed with addiction and or substance use disorder. It really is somebody that is just any kind of struggle. So it can be anxiety, it can be depression, it can be, I don't know. Most of it is substance use. Most of it is, we're either preventing and catching it ahead of time, or we're at somebody that has had multiple relapses. So we wanted to be a program where you didn't have to necessarily meet a criteria, because often people won't seek help until they've hit bottom.
Right.
And really, why do we do that? Why have we set up a system that, well, let's wait till everybody hits bottom and then end up in a rehab instead of, with other chronic conditions, heart disease, there is preventative measures. With every other disease model, there's preventative measures that you can do, and you can be aware of, and you can talk about it with your doctor. So we're trying to have addiction be the same kind of trend, like we put in prevention initiatives, and then if there is concern, we don't want it to be a stigma. We want it to be, right. Oh my God, that's completely normal and a great question, and let's try and address it. You don't necessarily have to go to inpatient treatment like our program. We could start with acupuncture, therapy, recovery support meetings. You don't have to identify as being an alcoholic or an addict if you want to stop drinking. You are welcome at these programs, even if you just don't want to really drink anymore. So do
you do outpatient as well then?
We don't here,
Okay.
but we can, we can refer
Can
to
refer.
the
Okay.
outpatient,
Okay.
yeah.
And do you find like with women, just the stigma
Oh.
prevents them from like like getting help or just even asking the question of, do I have a problem?
Without question. I mean, I will personally, when I became a mom, and my husband and I are from the same town, and we ended up moving back to the town to raise our kids. Our families are there. And I was probably 10 years sober at that time. I was like friends, the friend group and, the play groups and the Friday night pizzas, all were, people were constantly bringing, like, your turn to bring wine, and I would tell, I would say, oh, I don't drink anymore. I'm in recovery. And I was very deliberate. And I tell all the women that come through here, and I tell all the women I know, define yourself as someone in recovery, not I'm an alcoholic. Because if I say I'm an alcoholic, I'm going to worry that those friends that don't know me that well are not going to want their kids in my car.
Ah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not going to wonder that the word alcoholic just, it kind of is, it's negative.
Right.
It can be jarring. And for women, I really love to see them say, I'm in recovery, because it's empowering. And it allows us to, like, women in recovery, for me, it was such an empowering change in my life, because I didn't settle for less anymore. I got to choose the people I'm going to be around, the person I want to spend my life. Like, I didn't have not drinking gave me confidence that I didn't have. It like helped me be in control of, my own decisions. And so for me, it immediately I got that benefit. And
Wonderful. Because I'm
Yeah.
wondering, for someone like you who is a young mom in recovery, and every book club, I mean, really,
Everything.
they serve wine. I lived in Japan for a while, and the social life was at the American club around wine and mahjong. That's how the afternoon was spent, and Halloween. I mean, door to door, here's candy for you, here's booze for you. I mean, it's just what everybody does, or I don't want to say everybody, but most everybody.
Yes.
How is that for a woman in recovery who it's just, you're surrounded by it still,
Yeah. I feel like I was lucky and blessed in a way. My father, when I was 15, got sober, and he was, it was like definitely the most significant, like, event in his life, because it made so many things in his life make sense. So he was super curious. And then he wanted to share with everybody, this is why this is why this happened. And so I grew up with him being very vocal about it. And so I didn't really know that it was associated with shame. He also owned a restaurant in Boston near the Boston Garden, and it was a huge steak business and bar business. And he, as the owner, he was a sober man, and he ran the business. So he was always around it. So my sister quit drinking, I quit drinking, my sister-in-law quit drinking, my brother-in-law quit drinking. We were all in our early 20s. And it just didn't occur to us not to be social. So I had this advantage going in, that I grew up watching my dad in all these social situations with alcohol around, and I don't know,
it didn't stop him. It doesn't
No.
sound like, and it wasn't any sort of like, well, I can't go in that bar with these people because
then I
can't go to that restaurant because everybody will get a drink, or I can't go to that particular fundraiser or whatever, because they're always serving wine, or that wedding, there's always serving champagne. It's just, it is in
Everywhere.
our culture.
Everywhere.
And it's scary, I think, for people to say, well, why I couldn't do never drinking again.
Mhm.
How would you advise them?
Yeah, I have a really good friend, one of my best friends, and we've been running together for like 20 years. And she had a son that struggled, and is in recovery now. And we were running one day, and she said, because I watched like my son in this emotional pain, like I don't have an attraction to, she's like, her and her husband, they had a nightly cocktail. And she said, I don't want it anymore. Like, I don't want it. It's not attractive to me. Like, I see it as more of a negative. So she said, but I'm going out with friends it was during the summer. I'm going out on friends on Friday night. We're going for a sunset cruise on their boat. What am I going to do? And I was like, oh my gosh. She said, what do I say? Like, what? I don't know what to say. They're going to say, what cocktail do you want us to bring? Or we're going to have a drink of the night. We're going to have like a Cape Codder in, that's the cocktail with the cheese and the crab. She was panicked. About what? And I said, Martha, I just say not tonight. And she's like, but what will they think that means? And so she was so conscious of it. And so she went and she said, no one cared at all. No one even blinked. She said, oh, I'm not drinking. And they were like, oh, all right. Do you want seltzer, or what kind do you want? Do you want a soft drink? And she started to realize that it was her that was so self-conscious about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not anybody else. And I think that at age, she was probably 59, almost maybe 50, in her 50s then, but she's thinking about it like she's at BU.
Right.
And she's out with her college friends, and they're going to go, what?
What's wrong with you?
So it's like, oh my God, I'm an adult now. I get to do that without
choose. That's right. I get to choose. Because actually there's a tavern in our little community where we go regularly for dinner and stuff like that. And if they do tend to say, if you say, they'll say, well, what are you having? And if you say seltzer water, or I'm just good with water, or I'll have an iced tea, it's always like, everything okay?
I know.
And I thought, that's probably not a really healthy response it's normal response because that's how they make their money.
That's right.
But I wonder if other bars are kind of like that for their
regulars.
I totally think it is, because when you're like, oh, water, everybody are like,
yeah, what is going on?
I'm like, no, I can afford a drink. I just am choosing not to have
exactly, because they want and I'm usually just like, I'm going to give you the same amount. Like,
right, even if you give a good tip, right?
Don't worry, I got you. But if I think the mocktail, that has taken off. I think that's a really positive thing. They now, in New York and LA, there are sober clubs, which are amazing, because there are people that are not drinking, not because they can't, but because they choose not to. There has to be a space for that. And, whether it's, rather than, I like to take the word sober out of it, like for a dorm, just say it's a wellness dorm, and we don't use substances. And, we're doing like yoga, and, we're doing, meditation and mindfulness. And this is a dorm that if you don't use substances, like, you can do all these other holistic things, rather than sober dorm implies like the opposite of sober is drunk.
I never knew there was that option.
Yeah. There are a lot.
I never heard of that.
Yes.
I guess my kids are no longer college age. My youngest are 40 now. So
I didn't know that either, though. Mine are just out of college.
A lot of schools have that, but no kid wants to go to the sober dorm.
Right.
It's a stigma. So it's kind of blending you know, not, you know, I don't use substances as more of a, you know, the ideal would be that it's becomes a little bit mainstream without a lot of attention around it. And then it's easier for people to not partake.
And
If they
it's a
don't want
fun
to.
place. I
Yeah.
mean, make it a
Yeah.
fun place, not a
Yeah.
boring place,
Right.
just because you're not drinking. I
Well,
mean,
and I think that is, if you find like maybe it is when you do drink, it's like that image of who you think you are that you can't be when you're sober.
Yes, which is couldn't be further than the truth.
Yeah.
It's just the idea of it, or how we've, you know, we also talk in terms of, instead of, do you have a drinking problem? I will always ask someone is, what is your relationship with alcohol?
mhm.
Because who wants to have a problem? You know, it's kind of like, that's a hard conversation starter in any, you know, environment, any situation. Even here, I'll say, what is your relationship with alcohol? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? And so I feel like the more conversations there are around these things,
Mhm.
it's really just education. And it's really, like, again, like I said, I don't think, like, my friend group, there's no malintent. It's just all of a sudden, you know, a friend you'll notice that it's more and more that they want to get together. Or when you're together, rather than 3 glasses of wine, now they're opening up the second or third. And it's kind of happens, you know, organically,
Mhm.
that then they're in trouble. But it's and then it's not being afraid to, like, are you okay with this? And, you know, because it's a stress reliever, it's a mood enhancer, it's a boredom fixer.
Yeah, right.
There's so many times I think when we have, you know, even receptions at the Chamber of Commerce and things like that, it's
Yeah.
the thing that's comfortable for most people is just to have a drink in their hand.
Mhm.
And there's really no reason for that, except that puts a little barrier, you know, between you and the other person, for whatever reason. And so it's kind of fun sometimes
Psychological.
to purposely not have a drink in your hand and see how comfortable you can be. You have 2 hands to talk with. You have 2 hands for the buffet. You have, you know, you don't need to be holding a drink to be
Or it can be
comfortable.
seltzer.
Or
You'd
seltzer,
be
right,
surprised at how comfortable you are too. I think that was what my friend really discovered, that it's fine. It's like, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I had that. It was like the end of the day cocktail. Like, why?
Mhm.
And even though it's a cocktail, she
Mhm.
did feel like she felt better, you know, the
Mhm.
next day. When you say receptions, it's interesting because I've been to a million weddings. You know, I'm either the parent, you know, I'm the parent now at the wedding.
Right.
I'm the old person at the
I'm the
wedding.
grandparent at the wedding, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Keep
No,
going.
me too. And my niece got married last summer, and her mom is in recovery and I'm in recovery. And it was a huge wedding. It was on Nantucket. And I'm like, just do me a favor and have the sober, like the mocktail. So they had a mocktail special drink. And then at every table at the reception, they did not have wine on the table. They had wine poured, but they had Pellegrinos on every table,
Mhm.
which I thought was, and I was like, thank you so much. Cause her brother's in recovery. I'm in recovery, you know, there's only people in recovery. And so we're kind of throwing our 2 cents in. Whenever I go to a wedding, there's never Pellegrino on the table. It's a white and a red bottle of wine.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Or, you know, going to wedding showers or bridal showers, there's the bar and then there's a cooler of seltzers. So the cooler of seltzers don't even get the pretty bar.
Right.
They get the cooler.
Right.
So I'm like bending down to get a seltzer out of the cooler. It's
Yeah.
just like these little things that no one is even thinking about, but that,
Yeah, those
you
are
know,
great points.
And then, right, so then like my niece's shower was, you know, the bar, her wedding shower, and then it was the bar of like, here's a mocktail, here's a cranberry and soda, here's a Pellegrino, here's like, now you have your choice in those beverages too. And
Right.
but no, until you like talk about it or you think about it, no, you wouldn't think about it.
And it's nice to be prepared like that, even when you have company, or even if you're used to having a cocktail in the evening. I did find that my new favorite mocktail is a virgin, what?
You know, you're mojito.
Mojito, that's right. Because I actually feel healthy drinking it, because it's got mint, it's got lime, it's just club soda,
Yeah.
and it's maybe a squirt of stevia, and so you don't even need the sugar. And it's a delicious, refreshing,
Yeah.
with vitamins in it, you know, and it's just, and you feel fancy. You know, if you need to have a fancy drink, something like that is really
Well, I
handy.
think that's a great point that you make, Lori, is if you go and you're like, I'm not gonna, but you have all this kind of cool presentation, and you're like, now I'm depriving myself because I don't get to have one of those fancy, but if it is like a cool looking mocktail, or if it's presented nice,
and if the
you feel like you're getting a treat.
The bartenders aren't like, you know, could I get a water? And they're like looking everywhere for a water.
Where's the water?
Like,
I don't know.
so annoying to them. You kind of, if it's, you know, there's going to be people in recovery here. So, you know, be as gracious as you would be if they're ordering, like, can I get a bottle of water, as they would if I'm, you know, can I get a 3-shot turkey, wild turkey?
That's
Now,
right.
are you saying that like now, I mean, now that there are like more like sober bars or facilities, or now people are accommodating with mocktails and Pellegrino, are you seeing that there's like a trend, or like an underlying trend of people starting to question, like, why am I drinking? Am I drinking too much?
Yes, I do think that creates an out for people. I think that if you're presented with like a really cool mocktail or a drink, it's a good, you know, I think it's you know, it's not there yet, but there's the possibility of it all like being there more. It's just very, just our the culture is just, it's overlooked, but it's because it's not anybody's fault that it's overlooked. It's just kind of the way it is.
Right. And there are so many breweries and wineries. I'm sure it's not just where we live, but there's always an opportunity to have beer or wine. But I have noticed recently that, you know, the canned water, sparkling waters that actually just kind of smell like orange or smell like but they're offering options like that where before, you know, I've been to breweries where you don't have to, like you said, they had to look for water.
You gotta look for it. Everywhere I've gone, like traveling with my husband on, you know, he worked for a software company, and every year they would have like these sales trips. So, and we would go on these amazing, like we'd go to Nevis and the Bahamas and Iceland. And I was always the only sober one on the trip. Always. I'd be like, you know, we'd be on a boat, a little boat, like a little puddle, you know, boat going over to Nevis from the main island. And everyone's got like a rum. And I'm like, excuse me, may I have something with the rum? And it's just amazing. It really is. It's just, so I've been used to being in all of those like situations. And it's, you know, I visited, one of my sons was over in France for a semester abroad and did a homestay. And he had his mom, his France mom was so amazing. And it was like the best experience for him. She took such good care of him, and he really lucked out with her. They only spoke French. She did not speak English. And she invited my husband and I over on her little balcony to like have like hors d'oeuvres. And so we get out to the balcony and there's like all these cheeses and crackers from all over. This is Bordeaux, this is like all over. And she's trying to like explain to us what it is. And then there's a liquor, there's a red, a white wine, and I'm looking at my son and I'm saying, tell her I don't drink. And he's like, I don't know how to say that in French. And I'm like recovery, like alcohol, like mood. So I try to tell her like, oh no, thank you. And so she takes away the red and pours white. And I'm like, so I have to like, I pantomime out. I finally get to a point. My husband is like dying laughing. Harry's just like, you're embarrassing me. So finally I just did this. No, none of this. And she was like, okay. Like, I don't think she got it.
Uh,
I had to like
but
act
you
out.
didn't get anything to drink, did you?
I was like putting my hand over everything.
Oh my goodness.
I think I asked her, for one of her cigarettes just to do something. Like,
oh, that's a good trade, right?
I'm like, may I have fumar, whatever that is,
Well, I love the way you're promoting variety, and because also it gives people who do drink an option to have a second drink that is not alcoholic. It's just, well, I'll have another. Will you have another? Will you have another? You just sort of nod and nod and nod until no, I'll have a water. I'll have a sparkly water. I'll have a whatever. It just makes it more of an option. I mean, would love to see that as a trend for many people.
Yeah.
And
I think it would be great. And even young kids today that are going off to college, they just don't want to. And their voices really need to be heard as well. My children aren't those kids, but really, like, surprisingly, but they certainly have had an education and responsible trying to be.
It is really interesting though how much drinking is going on at those colleges, and not in heavy drinking.
So heavy. Blacking out is literally an acceptable thing.
Well,
which
it's often the goal.
And growing up, no one ever wanted to black out. Like, you would die if you blacked out. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, no. And yes, often the goal, and just so scary, just so scary.
Because they're drinking. I mean, I remember when mine talked about like a handle, and I was like, what's a handle?
Yeah.
And then you're like, it's like that big, like a gallon. Like, really?
Yeah.
It's just very
And
normal.
The other thing is parents drinking with their kids. And not like a cocktail out at dinner, but like partying, with their young adult kids or kids, that is that's something that I don't want to judge, but I wonder, like, about that too. Or there's lots of younger families now that they'll go to sporting events with their kids and they have like tailgates. So the day drinking from in your home at COVID isolated has transferred to day drinking on fields. And really, I think it would be good to be questioning that trend, because the message for me, for the kids, is, aren't I enough?
Well, I like the idea of questioning, even if somebody does not have a problem, to say, why do I want this? And this is what Lorna and I were talking about.
And it was interesting because we hadn't talked about it, but then one day we were sitting down talking, and Marianne said she was doing this challenge, and she said, I want to be accountable. And I'm like, it's really interesting that you say that, because I've really been questioning the same thing. Like, I don't
That's
really
so
want to drink. Like
amazing. It's so
I will go out and then I'm with my friends and like, oh, well, yeah, we're gonna order another one. And it's interesting because I'll say no, I'll have water to start, and they all kind of pause, and then the next time they're like, would you want to get a drink? I'm like, no, I'm still good.
Yeah.
But it definitely is because I'm like, I'm just ordering it because everybody else is. I feel
Right.
like crap the next day, even if I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
one glass of wine the next day, I'm just kind of like, not me. And the next day I'm like, why did I do that? So I'm like, I can't be the only one that's feeling like that, especially as you start to get older and you're like, I'm
There's
tired.
so many, and I think this is amazing because when your podcast, there's going to be so many women that ask the same question. And you're right about us aging as well. Like all of our hormonal changes, like we can't metabolize sugar like we used to. There's so much sugar in alcohol, and like everything changes. And so how our body responds, whether like you said, it's 1 or it's 2 or it's 3, that could shift. And then it's and that makes a lot of sense. But people wouldn't know to connect it to, a changing body. They
Right.
connect it to what is wrong with me.
Right.
Yeah, I noticed too that if you just have a feeling like I really want to drink, that's okay. But to say why, I'm feeling a little tense. Well, why? Just that little bit of thinking before you could still pour the drink, but it's nice to know
Why?
what you need a relief from,
Yes.
how what is it in your environment that's causing you to just say, let me just not care about it and let me just get a drink, and that kind of thing. So I love your thoughts about asking the questions and stuff like that. So I have a question for you because like you both know there's women over 50 are watching this, other people too, but I mean those are the women that are watching saying, I wonder if I have a problem. I do have a drink or two every night, or I do get drunk from time to time and I really don't want to. What would you, Lori, tell them to start doing to become more aware of what they're doing and prevent a problem if possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Be curious. Don't be afraid to be curious and ask the question. And to, what is it doing for me? What is it doing to me? What is my relationship with alcohol? Because a lot of times it's a false relationship. We think that it's providing relief. We think that it's providing a little bit of a checkout, but is it really? And maybe practicing not having it and practicing how does that feel, and how do you, like, really being mindful. It's really a practice in mindfulness. How do and being like curious and mindful about how do you feel not having it, and play it all out, like the rest of the evening or how you feel the next day. Maybe you're going to go for a walk instead. Is it that your body is changing and the way that you metabolize is different? And that's a very real thing that we don't often get told that either. And like our doctor's appointments or our annual physicals, it's like, be on the lookout. If your body's changing, you're going through menopause or whatever it is, like it can affect how alcohol affects you. So it's to the people that are be curious and be do some trials, do some other things, and have fun with it, and don't beat yourself up. Just it's aware, like you said, it's awareness and awareness of what it's around you and the culture that that we live in, and the messaging that we send. I'm always mindful of the messaging. Like if kids come home and you know, mom has had a stressful day, or the kid, you know, it's always like, I got a carpool, I got whatever. And they reach for that. The message is that's the answer.
Right.
And even if it is, and it takes we don't want our children growing up believing it's not true, because it isn't the answer. It's something that you do. You got to be careful if it's becoming a habit, you know, and it's really just trying on a lot of different things. But the, you know, and making sure that you don't have shame, because for women, it's really hard. It definitely, you know, you don't want to be like, I have a problem.
Right.
I would get rid of the word problem. I would throw the word problem out. I have a problem with alcohol. I would never, ever say that. I would never, ever say I'm an alcoholic. I would say I'm looking at my relationship with alcohol and I'm making maybe some slight little changes, and I feel really, really good. And it's those positive messages that we need to give each other and all women in general. And we won't be so afraid, I think.
Great advice.
That's great advice.
I also see that, you know, when Lauren and I were talking about this kind of thing too, a lot of times it's recommended to eat more fruits and vegetables because they're hydrating also. So, you know, and they give you the vitamins that are sucked out of your system when you are drinking a lot and when you're dehydrating from that. And so just sometimes a healthier diet helps shift the balance a little bit, because you were talking about how our bodies change and adapt to what goes in them. So yeah, you know,
But it's also complicated and intermersed with each other, but nobody talks about it. Nobody tells you any of that. Like when you start researching, you're like, really? That's all I need to do? Or if I did that, that would kind of balance this? Like, why is nobody talking about it?
Yeah, it just hasn't. I was saying the other day that pediatricians at age 13 should be doing like, just like they do every, you know, your annual checkup, they should be doing how do you manage stress? Like you get a, you know, as part of your packet, you know, like teach a little bit of mindfulness, teach a little bit of, you know, arm our kids with things to manage, you know, anxiety and stress and all those things with.
Because that's a whole other topic.
Great suggestion.
Yeah.
But, you know, even very young kids can do
yes.
You know, it just feels good.
Well, Marianne has her little tattoo on her wrist.
It says just breathe.
Just breathe.
That's my $1 million advice for everybody.
We started breath work here.
Oh, good.
I have a staff person who's certified in breath work. It's the most popular, one of the most popular groups. From 70 years old to 18, everyone's like, it's amazing. It sounds creepy if you walk in and you don't know what's going on, but
that's fabulous, because, you know, and it's free.
Yes.
Breathing is free.
And you can do it anywhere.
Drinking water is free.
You can sit in a meeting. You can be in a meeting. You're like, all right, I got to just breathe.
Sometimes that's all you can do. But okay, so Lori, what though, for those that are watching, think, holy crap, I really do think I have a problem. Even if you tell them not to use the word problem, they're going to think that. And what would you suggest they do if they really want help?
So I would go to, you can call me anytime, obviously, but so on social media, on Instagram, and like if you know, like if you're scrolling through Instagram and social media and you click on something that interests you, all of a sudden your feed is like populated with all those things. So my whole feed is all of that. So there's a handle called the Holistic Psychologist.
Oh, I follow her.
I follow.
Amazing. Like, I'm like, oh, And then there's like sober mom. There's, what is I have to think of the woman. Her name is Yvonne. I'm spacing on the handle. She was a mom that was like, drinking, like she does a lot of stuff about moms and drinking. I cannot remember. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, I'll tell you what, after we go off the air, would you send us a couple of those people that you follow and what your handle is on Instagram? And then we'll just put that on the podcast.
Yeah.
So that they have a couple options of, people.
There's a wonderful organization called She Recovers.
Okay.
She Recovers. They're doing, I think they started in Canada. And it's at any stage of drinking. There's doesn't matter. No labels. And so things like that. Yes, I will send them to you. But I would be curious. And once you kind of look at something, then other things are going to populate your feed and you can see what you like and what you don't like. But they're encouraging messaging and, blogs and all kinds of things like that. They're wonderful groups and organizations that you can join or be anonymous joining just to learn and be a part of it.
Great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask you one more time before we leave, because I don't want you to go without, if you have any thoughts in the back of your mind that you want to share with the people who are listening. Is there any final word you have?
Continue to support each other. We have to always support each other, and as women, and no judgment,
right?
And always, just be a resource for help, because we're all in it together. It's not easy. There's a lot of struggle, and we need people that can support us and that we can go to and talk to. So
that's huge.
Be a good friend. And I think that just makes the world better.
Agreed.
Great advice.
Thank you so much. And Lori, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Really
appreciate great.
I miss you, Lorna.
Yeah, I miss you too.
We got to catch up.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much.